The mysterious encounter. A lone spacecraft drifted through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly. Inside the cockpit, Ethan Carter leaned back in his chair, staring at the endless stars ahead. He was a simple cargo pilot, delivering supplies between space stations. Life in space was lonely, but he had made peace with it. Suddenly, a sharp beeping filled the cockpit. Ethan frowned and checked his console. A distress signal. "Great," he muttered. "Another lost ship." The signal came from a nearby uncharted planet. It was small, covered in thick clouds, and showed no signs of civilization. His instincts told him to ignore it. Space was dangerous, and distress calls often led to traps. But something about this signal felt different. It was weak, almost desperate. Against his better judgment, Ethan adjusted his course and set the ship on autopilot for landing. A crashed ship. As Ethan's ship touched down, he grabbed his blaster and stepped outside. The air was thin and cold, and the sky was a deep shade of purple. The planet was silent, except for the soft howling of the wind. Then he saw it, a small crashed pod, half buried in the dirt. Smoke curled from its broken hull. Whoever had sent the distress call was inside. Cautiously, Ethan approached and forced open the hatch. Inside, a girl lay motionless. She wasn't human. Her skin was pale blue, almost glowing under the faint light. Her hair was silver, flowing like liquid metal. Strange golden symbols covered her arms. She was injured, her breathing shallow. Ethan hesitated. He had seen aliens before, but never like this. Was she dangerous? He had no way of knowing. "Hey," he called out, shaking her lightly. "Can you hear me?" The girl's eyes fluttered open, deep violet, filled with fear. Her lips parted as she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They are coming." The unknown threat. Ethan stiffened. Who was coming? Before he could ask, his ship's warning alarms blared. His onboard AI, Zeke, spoke in a mechanical voice. "Incoming vessels detected. 4 ships. Unidentified origin." Ethan swore. He looked at the girl. Was she being hunted? He had 2 choices: leave her and escape, or take her with him. She was weak, helpless. He wasn't the kind of man to abandon someone in danger. Without another thought, he lifted her into his arms and carried her back to his ship. As soon as the doors sealed behind them, he rushed to the pilot's seat. "Zeke, take off." Now, the engines roared to life, and the ship shot into the sky, just as 4 black ships appeared on the horizon. They weren't just passing by. They were hunting her. A desperate escape. The enemy ships locked onto Ethan's craft, firing energy blasts that streaked through the sky. Ethan gripped the controls, dodging and weaving between the attacks. His heart pounded. He was just a cargo pilot, not a fighter. "Zeke, plot the fastest route out of here." Calculating. The girl stirred beside him, her breathing ragged. She tried to speak, but Ethan shook his head. "Save your strength," he told her. "I don't know what kind of trouble you're in, but we need to get out first." Zeke's voice interrupted. "Hyperspace jump in 30 seconds." Ethan glanced at the radar. The enemy ships were closing in. He didn't have 30 seconds. One of the ships fired a plasma missile straight at them. Ethan yanked the controls hard. The missile narrowly missed, exploding behind them in a burst of fire. 15 seconds. The girl suddenly grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "They won't stop," she whispered. "You should have left me." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Yeah, well, it's a little late for that." 5 seconds. Another blast rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed everywhere. The enemy ships were too fast. 3, 2, 1. The ship lurched forward, stars stretching into streaks of light as they jumped into hyperspace. The chase was over. For now. The truth begins. Ethan exhaled, slumping back in his seat. His hands trembled slightly. adrenaline still coursing through him. He turned to the girl, who was watching him with tired eyes. "Okay," he said, rubbing his temples. "Now that we're not dead, who are you? And why are they after you?" She hesitated, then whispered just 2 words. "I'm Lyra." She glanced down at the glowing golden symbols on her arms, as if they were a curse. Then she looked back at him and said something that sent a chill down his spine. "You don't understand. You've just made a terrible mistake." Hunted in the void. The Valkyrie shot through hyperspace, leaving the hostile ships far behind. The engines hummed softly, but inside the cockpit, the tension remained thick. Ethan Carter kept his hands steady on the controls, but his mind was racing. He had just rescued an alien girl, Lyra, who was clearly being hunted. He had no idea who was after her or why. He turned his head slightly, stealing a glance at the girl sitting in the co-pilot's seat. She looked fragile, barely able to keep her eyes open, yet there was something about her that felt immensely powerful. Lyra's silver hair fell across her shoulders, glowing faintly in the dim cockpit lights. Her golden tattoos pulsed rhythmically, like they were alive. She sat upright but stiff, as if expecting something terrible to happen at any moment. Ethan exhaled. "All right, time for some answers. Who the hell are you?" "All right," Ethan said, leaning back in his seat. "We're in hyperspace. We're safe for now. So how about you tell me what's going on?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. She seemed distant, her glowing eyes locked onto the swirling hyperspace tunnel outside the window. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was soft, but heavy with something Ethan couldn't quite place. "Guilt? Fear? My name is Lyra," she murmured. "And you shouldn't have saved me." Ethan scoffed. "Yeah, I got that part already. The guys shooting at us made that pretty clear. How about you tell me why?" She hesitated, her fingers lightly tracing the golden symbols on her arms. The glow flickered, like a heartbeat. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I am not supposed to be free." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What? Are you some kind of escaped prisoner?" Her head turned sharply, eyes burning with something fierce. "No, I was never meant to leave that planet." A cold feeling settled in Ethan's gut. Who were those ships? He pressed. Bounty hunters. A military fleet. She shook her head. Worse. Ethan waited, but she said nothing else. "Look, lady, I just risked my life picking you up from that death trap. The least you can do is—" Before he could finish, the cockpit alarms blared. A chase through shadows. "Warning. Ethan's onboard AI, VX, interrupted. Incoming vessels detected. 3 ships, approaching fast." Ethan's stomach dropped. "That's impossible. We're in hyperspace." "Tracking signature detected," VX continued. "They followed us." Ethan's pulse spiked. How? No one could track a hyperspace jump unless... He turned to Lyra. "What did you do?" She looked just as alarmed as he was, staring down at her arms. The golden tattoos on her skin were pulsing violently, as if reacting to something unseen. Ethan swore. "You've got a tracker on you, don't you?" She shook her head rapidly. "No, it's not a tracker. It's worse." Before Ethan could demand an explanation, the Valkyrie suddenly shuddered violently. The enemy ships had arrived. An impossible battle. The entire ship lurched as a plasma blast slammed into their rear shields. The lights flickered, and alarms screamed through the cockpit. "Shields at 47%, VX reported. Enemy ships are gaining." Ethan gritted his teeth, gripping the controls. He wasn't a fighter pilot. He was a cargo runner. His ship wasn't built for this. "VX, find me the closest exit point out of hyperspace." "Negative. The enemy is disrupting our navigation." Another blast rocked the ship. Sparks flew from the control panel. The Valkyrie couldn't take much more of this. Ethan's mind raced. He needed a way out. Fast. Then Lyra grabbed his wrist. "Turn off the engines," she said. Ethan stared at her like she'd lost her mind. What? That's suicide. We'll be sitting ducks. Trust me, she said, her voice calm but urgent. It's the only way. Another direct hit sent them spinning wildly. The shields were almost gone. Ethan had no choice. He killed the engines, drifting into darkness. The ship went silent, its thrusters shutting down completely. The stars outside stopped stretching, and suddenly the Valkyrie was drifting in the void of space, completely still. Ethan held his breath. The enemy ships slowed down, circling around them like hungry wolves. They think we're dead, Lyra whispered. Ethan clenched his fists. For how long? Her glowing tattoos dimmed, and she closed her eyes. As long as I can keep us hidden. Ethan didn't like the sound of that. The enemy ships lingered outside, scanning, searching. Minutes passed like hours. Then, finally, they turned away and disappeared into hyperspace. Ethan released the breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Okay, he muttered, restarting the engines. That was insane. Now, you're gonna tell me exactly what's going on. Lyra slowly opened her eyes. I told you, she said. You shouldn't have saved me. Ethan scowled. Yeah, well, too late for that. Now start talking. She looked at him, hesitation in her glowing eyes. Then, finally, she spoke. The people hunting me. They're not after me. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. They're after what's inside me. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. And if they get it, she continued, this entire galaxy is doomed. The silent betrayal. The Valkyrie drifted through the vast emptiness of deep space, silent and undisturbed. The only sound was the faint hum of the ship's engines, keeping the life support systems running. Inside, Ethan Carter sat in the dimly lit cockpit, gripping the armrests of his chair. His mind was spinning. The girl sitting across from him, Lyra, was no ordinary alien. She had said something before their narrow escape, something that had been repeating in his mind ever since. They're not after me. They're after what's inside me. Ethan exhaled sharply and turned to her. All right, no more games. You're gonna tell me exactly what's going on. Now. Lyra was sitting on the co-pilot's chair, her silver hair falling over her shoulders, her golden tattoos dimly glowing in the dark. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked resigned. You won't believe me, she murmured. Ethan scoffed. Lady, I just dodged an entire fleet of unknown hostiles who somehow managed to track a hyperspace jump. Try me. Lyra hesitated, then took a slow breath. There's something inside me. A weapon. Or at least, that's what they call it. Ethan's pulse quickened. A weapon. She nodded. A long time ago, my people, the Velari, created something. Powerful. Too powerful. It was supposed to be destroyed. But instead, they hid it. She placed a hand on her chest. Inside me. Ethan leaned forward. You're telling me you've got some kind of super weapon inside your body. Not just any weapon, Lyra whispered. A living one. Something ancient. Something that was never meant to wake up. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. And those guys chasing us. They want to take it out of you. Lyra nodded. They've been hunting me for years. Ethan rubbed his temples. He had a bad feeling about this. So let's say this thing wakes up inside you. What happens then? Lyra's violet eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw genuine fear in them. If it wakes up, nothing in this galaxy will survive. An unwelcome guest. Ethan was about to respond when suddenly, the ship's lights flickered. A shiver ran down his spine. VAX, status report. The AI's voice responded, but it sounded off, distorted. Unknown interference detected. Systems compromised. Ethan immediately shot to his feet, hand on his blaster. We've been boarded. Lyra's eyes widened. How? We're in deep space. Ethan's gut twisted. There was only one way someone could have gotten on board. They had been inside the ship the whole time, a shadow among them. Ethan moved quickly, grabbing a pulse rifle from the weapon locker. "Stay behind me," he ordered Lyra, but she was already standing, her golden tattoos glowing brighter as if reacting to the threat. They moved through the darkened corridors of the Valkyrie, the emergency lights casting eerie red glows on the walls. Then, a sound, a faint clinking, like metal tapping against metal. Ethan tensed. "Whoever you are, come out now, and maybe I won't shoot you." Silence. Then, movement. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. It was one of his own crew members, Reese Keller, a mercenary Ethan had hired a few months back for protection. The guy had always been quiet, observant, but Ethan never thought much of it. Now, Reese stood in the dim light, a blade in one hand and a transponder device in the other. Ethan's stomach dropped. "You," he breathed. "You betrayed us." Reese smirked. "It's nothing personal, Carter. Just business." He tossed the transponder into the air, catching it casually. "The girl's worth more than you'll ever make in your lifetime." Lyra stiffened beside Ethan. The glow on her skin pulsed dangerously. Ethan tightened his grip on the rifle. "You ratted us out. That's how they found us in hyperspace." Reese nodded. "Smart guy." Ethan clenched his jaw. "I trusted you." Reese shrugged. "Bad call." Then, without warning, he threw the knife. A fight in the dark. Ethan barely had time to react. He shoved Lyra aside just as the blade whizzed past his face, cutting across his cheek. Bang! He fired his pulse rifle, but Reese was fast, dodging and vanishing into the shadows. "VX, lock down the ship," Ethan barked. But instead of the as-usual response, a garbled voice crackled through the speakers. "Control, overridden. Core breach, imminent." Ethan swore. Reese had hacked the ship. Lyra suddenly grabbed Ethan's arm, her golden tattoos flaring bright. He's not alone. Ethan's stomach clenched. Footsteps echoed from the corridor ahead. More figures emerged from the shadows. 3 of them. Reese had brought backup. Ethan lifted his rifle, but Lyra stepped forward, her eyes glowing like molten gold. The air crackled around her. The golden symbols on her skin spread outward, moving like living energy. And then, everything exploded into light. The awakening. The energy erupted from Lyra in a wave, slamming into the attackers. Reese and his men were thrown backward, crashing into the walls with bone-breaking force. The entire ship shook violently, and warning sirens blared. Ethan shielded his eyes from the brightness. When the light finally faded, Lyra stood panting, her tattoos still burning gold. Reese lay on the ground, unconscious. The other mercenaries weren't moving. Ethan looked at her in shock. What the hell was that? Lyra pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "I told you," she whispered. "The thing inside me. It's waking up." Ethan stared at the fallen mercenaries, then at Lyra. This was no ordinary rescue mission anymore. This was something far bigger. And Ethan Carter had just gotten himself in too deep. Escape into the unknown. A silent aftermath. The Valkyrie floated in the vast void of space, silent except for the flickering of the emergency lights and the hum of the failing life support system. The ship had taken a beating. Burn marks scarred the interior walls, and the lingering scent of ionized energy from Lyra's unleashed power still hung in the air. Ethan Carter leaned against the bulkhead, gripping his injured arm. A fresh gash ran along his bicep where Reese's knife had grazed him. He wasn't thinking about the pain, though. His mind was reeling from what had just happened. Reese had betrayed them. The mercenary was lying unconscious on the floor, his body still twitching from the aftershock of Lyra's energy blast. The other 2 intruders, the ones Reese had smuggled aboard, were dead. Their bodies had been thrown against the steel walls with enough force to break bone and metal alike. And then there was Lyra. She was sitting in the dim corner of the room, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if she were afraid of what she had done. Her golden tattoos still flickered with residual energy, slowly dimming, but the fear in her eyes remained. Ethan exhaled sharply and ran a hand through his hair. Well, that was a disaster. Lyra looked up, her violet eyes haunted. "I warned you," she whispered. Ethan scoffed, grabbing a medkit from the wall. "Yeah, well, next time try warning me before you turn into a walking supernova." He knelt beside Reese and checked his pulse. Alive. Barely. Ethan wasn't sure what to do with him yet. Killing wasn't his style, but leaving a traitor alive on his ship, that was a problem. Lyra's voice broke the silence. "They're coming." Ethan froze mid-motion. "What?" Lyra pressed a trembling hand to her chest, where her tattoos were slowly darkening. "The ones hunting me. They felt what I did." She swallowed hard. "And now they're coming." Ethan felt an icy chill creep up his spine. "How much time do we have?" Lyra met his gaze. "Minutes. The hunt resumes." The moment she spoke, the ship's alarms blared. Warning. Incoming hostile ships. 6 vessels detected. Weapons locked. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. 6 ships. Twice as many as before. Damn it. He bolted to the cockpit, gripping the controls as the enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Dark, angular ships with blood-red markings covering their hulls. Lyra had been right. They must have felt her power from across the system, like a beacon calling out to them. The comms crackled to life. A cold, mechanical voice filled the cockpit. "Surrender the girl, or be destroyed." Ethan's jaw clenched. He stole a glance at Lyra, who was now gripping the back of the pilot's chair, her knuckles white. "Not happening," Ethan muttered. The enemy ships opened fire. A desperate maneuver. The Valkyrie shuddered as plasma bolts struck the shields. Sparks flew from the consoles. Shields at 22%. Ethan gritted his teeth. "VX, give me options." Survival probability. 6%. Evasive action recommended. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He slammed the thrusters forward, throwing the Valkyrie into a steep dive. The ship spiraled downward, dodging between enemy fire as the fleet pursued mercilessly. But there was a problem. The Valkyrie was fast, but these ships were faster. Ethan's mind raced. He needed a way out. Now. Then his eyes flicked to the navigation map. And that's when he saw it. A wormhole. It was unstable, flickering like a violent storm in space, a swirling vortex of blue and black energy. No sane pilot would fly through it, which was exactly why Ethan had to do it. He turned to Lyra. "I hope you're not scared of bad ideas." She blinked. "Why?" Ethan punched the thrusters. "Because we're about to do something really stupid." The leap into the unknown. The Valkyrie raced toward the wormhole, enemy ships right on their tail. "Ethan," Lyra shouted, "that thing could tear us apart." "Yeah, well, so could they," Ethan shouted back. The comms crackled again. "Final warning. Surrender the girl, or be erased." Ethan gritted his teeth. "VX, full power to forward thrusters. Engaging emergency acceleration. Structural integrity at risk." The ship lurched forward, the wormhole growing larger and larger in the view screen. The gravitational forces around it twisted and churned, pulling at the ship's hull like invisible hands. Behind them, the enemy ships hesitated. They wouldn't follow. Ethan smirked. Cowards. And then, they hit the wormhole. Lost in the void. The moment they entered, everything changed. The cockpit flashed white, and Ethan felt like his body was being ripped apart and reassembled at the same time. The ship tumbled violently, alarms screaming. Lyra clutched his arm, her eyes squeezed shut. "Ethan." The ship plunged deeper, and for a moment, it felt like they were being pulled through an endless void of shattered time and space. Shapes moved in the darkness. Things that shouldn't exist. Then, just as suddenly, The ship burst out into open space. Silence. Ethan gasped for breath, hands gripping the controls. Lyra was breathing hard, her tattoos flickering weakly. Ethan blinked at the navigation screen. Where the hell are we? VX's response was unsettling. Location unknown. No known star systems detected. Ethan exhaled slowly. Well, that's new. Lyra turned to him, her face pale. Ethan, I don't think we're in our galaxy anymore. Ethan looked out of the viewport, his stomach twisting. The stars were wrong. The space around them was darker, deeper, like they had entered a part of the universe that was never meant to be explored. And then, something moved in the distance. Something massive. Something that was waiting for them. Ethan's heart pounded as he whispered the only thing that came to mind. We are so screwed. The ancient secret. Lost in the void. The Valkyrie floated lifelessly in the unknown expanse, surrounded by a darkness deeper than space itself. Ethan Carter sat frozen in the pilot's seat, his fingers gripping the controls so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His breathing was uneven, his pulse pounding in his ears. The stars were wrong. Everything beyond the viewport looked alien. The familiar constellations of the galaxy were gone. No nebulae. No planets. No recognizable star systems. Ethan swallowed hard. VX, where the hell are we? The AI's voice crackled through the speakers, sounding glitchy, almost hesitant. Location. Unknown. No known navigational data exists for this region. Time-space distortion detected. Lyra, sitting in the co-pilot's seat, was pale and trembling. Her golden tattoos flickered weakly, as if drained of energy. This isn't right, she murmured. Her violet eyes darted across the strange starless abyss. I've never seen space like this before. Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. That makes two of us. But something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. There was a presence here. Something vast. Something watching them. Then, in the distance, it moved. A presence in the dark. At first, it was just a shadow against the void, stretching impossibly large. But as the Valkyrie drifted closer, the true scale of the thing became clear. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't an asteroid. It was a structure, so massive that it seemed to distort the very fabric of space around it. A colossal monolith, ancient and eerily silent, covered in glyphs and markings that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly glow. It was floating in the abyss, untouched by time. Lyra gasped, her eyes widening in recognition. No, it can't be. Ethan turned to her. You know what that thing is? She swallowed. It's Valari. Ethan blinked. Your people built that. She shook her head. No, my people feared it. Ethan's pulse quickened. That wasn't a good answer. The docking bay. The ship's sensors flickered erratically. Then, without warning, the monolith's exterior began to shift. Massive metallic plates peeled apart, revealing what looked like a hangar bay, as if the structure itself was inviting them in. Ethan's instincts screamed no, but Lyra was already moving. We have to go in, she whispered. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Yeah, see, I was thinking the exact opposite. Lyra turned to him, her golden tattoos glowing slightly. Ethan, don't you get it? This place, it's the only reason I'm still alive. It's calling me. Ethan exhaled sharply. He hated this. Everything about it felt wrong. But they had no fuel left for another jump. No way to navigate back home. This was their only choice. Fine, he muttered, guiding the Valkyrie toward the opening. But if anything so much as breathes weird, we're out of here. As they approached, the ship's systems flickered violently, and for a brief moment, Ethan could have sworn he heard a whisper. Not from Lyra. Not from VX, but from the monolith itself. Welcome home. The forgotten hallways. The Valkyrie touched down in the dark hangar, the ship's metal frame groaning under the sudden silence. Outside the viewport, The hangar bay stretched into pitch-black corridors, long abandoned and covered in dust. Ethan grabbed a blaster and clipped a flashlight to his belt. "Stay close," he told Lyra as they stepped out onto the cold metal floor. The air was thin, but breathable. The walls were lined with ancient alien text, shifting and pulsing faintly, as if still alive. Lyra ran her fingers over the symbols, her expression distant, unreadable. "This place is old," she whispered. "Far older than my people." Ethan frowned. "I thought you said it was Valeri." She shook her head. "No, the Valeri didn't build it. We only found it." Ethan didn't like where this was going. Then who did? Lyra exhaled. Something older. Something that should have stayed forgotten. Ethan clenched his jaw. "Fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted to hear." The Chamber of Echoes. They continued down the dark hallways, their footsteps echoing eerily. The deeper they went, the more the walls seemed to shift, as if watching them. Then suddenly, a door opened on its own. Beyond it was a vast chamber, its walls covered in towering glyphs, glowing faintly with energy. At the center was a pedestal, and on it, something was waiting. A floating crystalline sphere, swirling with golden energy, pulsed faintly as they stepped closer. Lyra gasped, her knees almost giving out. "No," she whispered. "This can't be real." Ethan glanced at her. "What is it?" She slowly stepped forward. "It's called the Eon Core. It's the source of my people's greatest power and their greatest fear." Ethan exhaled slowly. "And I'm guessing that means it's bad news." Lyra turned to him, her expression grave. "It's worse than bad. If this thing is still active, it means the war that nearly wiped out my species isn't over." Ethan's stomach twisted. A war. Before he could ask anything else, the entire chamber trembled. A deep rumbling sound filled the air, like something massive waking up. Lyra's tattoos flared brighter than ever, as if responding to the energy around them. Ethan raised his blaster. "Ah, what the hell is happening?" Lyra took a step back, terror in her eyes. "We weren't alone here." And then, the shadows around them began to move. The final stand. The awakening. The ancient monolith shuddered, its metallic walls groaning as if they were coming alive. The eerie glow of the Eon Core pulsed like a heartbeat, sending ripples of golden energy across the room. Ethan Carter tightened his grip on his blaster, his pulse hammering. Something was waking up. Beside him, Lyra staggered, clutching her glowing tattoos, her violet eyes wide with terror. "No, this shouldn't be happening." Ethan exhaled sharply. "You keep saying that. I'd really love to hear what should be happening." Lyra's lips trembled. "We were never supposed to find this place. It was sealed for a reason." Boom. A deep, unnatural rumbling filled the air, making the walls vibrate. The ancient glyphs on the chamber walls shifted, glowing brighter and brighter as a low, inhuman voice echoed through the vast chamber. "You have come, at last." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Yeah, I come like that." The air around them thickened, crackling with unseen energy. Then, a shape emerged from the shadows. It wasn't a person. It wasn't even alive. It was a towering construct, a machine forged of blackened metal and Valeri glyphs, standing at least 10 feet tall. Its eyes burned with golden light, the same eerie glow as Lyra's tattoos. Lyra took a step back, shaking her head. "It's a sentinel." Ethan glanced at her. "A what now?" "The guardians of the Eon Core," she whispered. "They were programmed to eliminate anyone who tried to awaken its power." Ethan grimaced. "So, in other words, we're screwed." The sentinel's head swiveled toward them, its voice reverberating across the room. "You are unworthy. The core must not be disturbed." Then, it attacked. The battle for survival. Ethan barely had time to react before a shockwave of golden energy blasted outward from the sentinel's chest. The force slammed into him, throwing him against the far wall. He hit the ground hard, his blaster skidding out of reach. Lyra cried out, barely dodging as the energy singed the air where she had been standing. The Sentinel's arms morphed, shifting into twin energy blades, humming with deadly power. It moved with unnatural speed, closing the distance between them in seconds. Ethan rolled onto his feet. No weapon, no plan, no chance. Fantastic. VX, he gasped, tapping his earpiece. I could really use some ship defenses right about now. VX's voice crackled back. Negative. External interference blocking all remote commands. You are on your own. Ethan swore. Of course we are. The Sentinel lunged at Lyra. She threw up her hands, and her golden tattoos flared bright, creating a shimmering barrier of pure energy. The Sentinel's blades slammed against it, sending sparks flying. Lyra gritted her teeth. I can't hold it. For long. Ethan knew they had seconds before the Sentinel overwhelmed her. He scanned the room desperately. Then he spotted something. A control panel built into the wall, covered in the same ancient glyphs that shimmered across the monolith's surface. It was a long shot, but right now, it was their only shot. Ethan ran for it. A desperate gamble. The Sentinel noticed. Its golden eyes flashed, and suddenly, it was right behind him. Ethan felt the burning heat of its energy blade just inches from his back. He dove forward, sliding across the floor as the blade sliced the air where his head had been. He slammed his hand onto the control panel, hoping for anything. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the entire monolith shook violently. The Sentinel froze, its golden eyes flickering. The Eon core flared, its energy pulsing wildly. Lyra staggered. What did you do? Ethan had no idea. But whatever he had activated had caused something else to wake up. The glyphs around the chamber shifted, rearranging themselves into a new pattern. The Sentinel's body locked up, its form trembling. Then, the deep, ancient voice returned. Power restored, releasing restraints. Ethan barely had time to react before the entire room split apart, revealing something hidden beneath the floor. A second figure. The ancient warrior. Unlike the Sentinel, this figure was organic, though barely. It was humanoid, but its body was covered in Vaylari armor, layered with golden energy lines. Its eyes snapped open, piercing silver. And then, it spoke. The war is not over. Ethan's heart stopped. The new figure rose from the chamber floor, its armor glowing with power. The Sentinel turned to attack, but in one swift motion, the warrior thrust out a hand, and a wave of golden energy ripped through the air, slamming the Sentinel into the wall with crushing force. The towering machine collapsed, its eyes flickering, before it fell still. Silence. Ethan stared at the armored figure, still in shock. Lyra, however, looked terrified. No, she whispered, her eyes wide. This isn't right. You were sealed away. The figure turned to her, its silver eyes locking onto hers. I was, it said, but now I am free. It took a step forward, the ground trembling beneath its weight. And now, the warrior continued, the reckoning will begin. The ultimate consequence, the awakening of a war. The chamber shook violently, the pulsating glow of the Eon core filling the air with raw energy. Ethan Carter took a cautious step back, his blaster clutched tightly in his hands. But deep down, he knew it was useless. Before them stood the Vaylari warrior, a being long thought to be forgotten, its golden energy coursing through ancient armor, its piercing silver eyes unblinking. Lyra was paralyzed with fear, her golden tattoos burning hotter than ever, reacting to the warrior's presence. You were sealed away for a reason, she whispered, her voice trembling. The warrior turned its head slightly, regarding her with something that might have been recognition or pity. And yet, here I stand, it replied, its voice deep, echoing through the chamber like a memory dragged from the past. Ethan stepped forward cautiously. Okay, I'm gonna take a wild guess here and say, this is bad. The warrior's silver eyes flicked toward him, unreadable. You do not know what you have done. Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. Yeah, seems to be a running theme today. Lyra's breathing was shaky. She could feel it. The energy in the air was wrong, shifting like a storm that hadn't fully formed yet. You were never meant to be freed, she murmured. The warrior took a step forward, the ground beneath them trembling. And yet, here I am. The war is not over. And now, it must be finished. A warrior without an enemy. Ethan exchanged a quick glance with Lyra. Okay, great speech. Love the intensity, really. But, what war are we talking about? The warrior studied him, then slowly looked around the chamber, his expression unreadable. The war against the Harbingers, he finally said. The great enemy that once threatened to consume the Velari and all life beyond. Lyra's face paled further. The Harbingers, they're gone. They were wiped out thousands of years ago. The warrior's golden armor pulsed, and for a moment, something flickered in his ancient gaze. Gone, he repeated, as if the word itself was foreign to him. A long silence filled the chamber. Then, suddenly, the Eon core pulsed with raw energy, and Lyra screamed. The truth of the core. Ethan turned in horror as Lyra collapsed to her knees, clutching her chest as if something inside her was burning her alive. Lyra. He moved to grab her, but the moment his fingers touched her skin, an electric shock sent him stumbling backward. Her golden tattoos flared wildly, spreading across her body, shifting into new symbols, ones Ethan had never seen before. Something's wrong, she gasped, her eyes wide with terror. The core. It's waking up inside me. The warrior tilted his head. Then you are the vessel. Ethan's stomach twisted. Vessel for what? The warrior slowly turned toward him, his silver eyes glowing like stars. For the Eon's final command. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. And what exactly is that command? Lyra's body arched backward, a strangled cry escaping her lips as the energy around the core pulsed violently. The warrior watched without emotion. To burn the galaxy. And start again. A choice that will change everything. Ethan's blood ran cold. No, 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 he shook his head, stepping between Lyra and the warrior. That's not happening. Not today. The warrior tilted his head, studying him like one would an insect. The Eon core does not make mistakes. The cycle must continue. The vessel must be released. Lyra gasped, struggling to hold on as the energy within her fought to break free. I don't want this, she choked out. I don't want to destroy anything. The warrior took another step forward. It is not your choice. Ethan raised his blaster. Yeah. Well, I don't believe in destiny. And I sure as hell don't believe in your final command. He pulled the trigger. The shot blasted through the warrior's chest. And did nothing. The warrior barely flinched, his golden armor absorbing the hit like it was nothing more than a whisper. Ethan barely had time to react before an invisible force grabbed him, lifting him off the ground and slamming him into the far wall. Pain exploded through his body as he hit the cold metal. His vision blurred. Lyra screamed his name. The warrior turned back to her, raising a glowing hand. It is time. Lyra's ultimate power. Lyra's golden tattoos flared, and suddenly, the chamber exploded with light. The energy surging through her veins surged outward, slamming into the warrior with enough force to crack the very walls of the monolith. The Eon core shattered, its energy spilling into the air like a dying star. The warrior staggered. Ethan, still gasping for breath, blinked as Lyra rose from the ground, her body glowing like a celestial being, her violet eyes blazing with newfound power. The warrior paused, staring at her as if seeing something he had never expected. This was not foretold, he murmured. Lyra clenched her fists, her energy spiraling out of control. I don't care about your prophecies, she shouted. I am not a weapon. With a final cry, she unleashed everything. The warrior was engulfed in the golden inferno, his form disintegrating into dust, his voice a fading echo. The cycle will continue. And then he was gone. The aftermath. Ethan coughed, pushing himself up. Okay, he wheezed. That was officially the craziest thing I've ever seen. Lyra turned to him, her body still faintly glowing. But this time, there was no fear in her eyes. Only freedom. The core is gone, she whispered. Its cycle is broken. It can't control me anymore. Ethan gave her a small, tired smirk. So, no burning down the galaxy, then. She smiled back. Not today. Outside the monolith, space itself seemed calmer. The stars, once wrong, now felt familiar again. For the first time in a long time, Lyra felt like she belonged to herself. Ethan exhaled, offering her his hand. So, what now? Lyra looked toward the vast, open stars. Now, she said, taking his hand. Now we write our own future. The Valkyrie's engines hummed to life. The stars stretched before them. And with one last look at the broken monolith, Ethan Carter and Lyra disappeared into the endless unknown. Free at last.